APIing. One API. One API. APIA Nevada is a grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Concili Incorporated is Nevada's premier Democratic campaign firm, fighting for progressive issues and candidates for over a decade, and proud sponsor of Battle-Born Progress.
This episode of Out in Front brought to you by
Concili Inc., Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt, as well as our episode sponsors, Save Lives Nevada and Washoe Education Association.
With Annette. My name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battle-Born Progress. So excited to have you this evening. Sorry we're a few minutes late. We were having some technical difficulties because, Facebook is trash. But here we are in the flesh, and we are ready to talk this evening about all things early voting. I'm super excited about this panel tonight. Some of my besties are on this panel. So we've got Emily Prasad Zamora. She is the state director of Silver State Voices. She does all of our civic engagement, election protection, voting rights work with us. So we're super excited to have her. We also have our very own Brian Harris. He is our voter education organizer and does an amazing job with us doing the voter guide. He does all kinds of work with Emily's team, just amazing. And then we have Wes Ewell. I think I said that right, Wes. They are with the ACLU of Nevada. They do all of the communications work over there. One of our favorite folks, and we get to work with them on all things elections. So welcome to this fabulous panel. Excited to have you all tonight. Emily, I'm going to have you come in first. We have early voting starting this week, obviously on Saturday, but that doesn't mean people can't vote right now. People can vote by mail if they want. So talk to us about all of the different options people have for voting in the state of Nevada and all of the exciting opportunities they have coming up to vote as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Annette, for having me on tonight. And as Annette said, early voting starts this Saturday. I can't believe it's another election cycle here again. But we're really excited because in Nevada, there are 3 different ways that you can actually turn out and cast your ballot. Clearly, there's early voting this Saturday. And the cool thing about Nevada is that we have 14 days of early voting. And there are so many different locations that you can go and vote. Just on this Saturday, there are going to be locations that open at 9 a.m., 10, and even some that open at 11 that are open up until 8 o'clock at night. So there's lots of flexibility there. There's voting in person as well on election day. Polling locations on election day are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then last but definitely not least is one of the best ways of voting is voting by mail. And so through a lot of the amazing advocacy work that we collectively did in this last legislative session, we passed Assembly Bill 321 that now requires every eligible Nevadan that's an active voter to receive a ballot in the mail with paid postage. And so you may have actually just recently received it in your mailbox, and you can fill it out and put it back in your mailbox, or you can drop it off at any of the drop boxes that your county has. So it's it's easy and it's accessible. And if anything, I think that it's cool that there's different options. We see people that love to go with their family during the first day of early voting. And then there's folks who just don't want to leave the house and want to just be able to put their ballot in the mailbox and ensure that it's counted. So lots of different ways.
All right. And before we go to Wes, talk to us about what folks need to do if they're not registered to vote yet for this primary election. The official primary date is June 14th, Tuesday, the second Tuesday of June. But again, you can start voting now by mail, or you can vote early, or you can vote on election day. You have all the options. But what if a person isn't registered to vote yet? What options do folks have now to get registered, Emily?
So lucky for Nevada voters, we have an amazing legislature that passed same-day voter registration. And so what that means is that if you are a Nevada resident, you're a U.S. citizen over 18 years old, you've been a Nevada resident for over 30 days and have lived in your precinct for over 10 days, you can just show up to your polling location and register to vote through same-day voter registration. What you need to have with you is a current Nevada ID, so either a driver's license, a permit, or a Nevada identification card. And you're able to just go ahead and register to vote. And at the same day, you cast your ballot. And what's something that's really important, Annette, is that we have a lot of haters out there that say, oh, same-day voter registration is not safe. But actually, there's a lot of amazing safeguards that our county registrars and Secretary of State, who is a Republican, by the way, put into place to ensure that folks can participate in same-day voter registration and they're not, casting another ballot in another state. There's a lot of provisions on the back end that happen to ensure that a ballot is provisional until their identity is confirmed fully.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And that's actually a perfect segue to Wes. Wes, I want to talk to you about the big lie. There are still folks all around the state and all around the country perpetuating this big lie, this nonsense and myth that there's all this rampant voter fraud, which isn't real, and all of this other nonsense. So with the large spread of the big lie and disinformation in general, how can our community members all over the state of Nevada combat this rhetoric that has caused confusion for voters? And how do we, as Nevada voters, push back against that and really make sure that we encourage other voters to go out and make their voices heard this election cycle?
Yeah, thanks, Annette. That is definitely a big one, right? We're seeing all of these proponents of really backwards thinking elections proposals kind of across the state keep popping up. And I really do think you're correct that it's really based in disinformation and really can cause some confusion. So I think the first piece of advice that I would give to the voters of Nevada is to really make sure that you're being a critical thinker about the information that you're receiving online, particularly on social media. We see so much disinformation spread on social media. Like, take an extra second, click the link before you share it, check to make sure, like, is this a legitimate news source? Are the sources being cited clearly in the story, right? And kind of do that examination. Also look for organizations that you can trust, like Silver State Voices, ACLU of Nevada. These are like nonpartisan operations doing really like neutral information that you can really rely on when it comes to things like how you can participate in elections. And then just like, I always encourage people to do peer pressure, right? Like if you're the person in your friend group that like knows the truth of these things, like be a cheerleader for that accurate information for sure.
And y'all at home, these are the experts on voting. So put your questions in the chat. We will get to audience questions in just a little bit. All election questions are on the table. So if y'all have questions about the elections that are coming up, the primary election, which is coming up on June 14th, like I said, early voting is starting this weekend, or you can vote by mail now. Or if you want, we can also answer questions about the general election coming up for 2022. So lots of good stuff that we can talk about tonight, and we want to answer all of your questions at home. Wes, before we get to our next question that I kind of gave to you ahead of time, let's talk about your shirt, because you got your shirt on. This is your fabulous election protection shirt. Yes, show it off. Talk to us about the hotline for election protection and how folks can call in their language and access information if they're having trouble voting, and how that information gets back to us so we can help make sure that their voices are heard and their vote is cast.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to wear my shirt. I mean, honestly, always. I kind of want to wear it year round, but it's one of my favorite programs that we do with our Let Nevadans Vote Coalition is our election protection program. And I just really would encourage you, if you're out at the polls encountering issues, like call the hotline. We have hotlines for different languages, 866-OUR-VOTE. We also have it in Spanish, Arabic, like you name it. And there's going to be people on the line where if it's a simple question, they should be able to get it answered right away. And if it's not a simple question, like it will connect you to an ACLU of Nevada attorney, one of our other volunteer attorneys. Like we will make sure that that question gets addressed and that all, eligible voters have access to cast a ballot for sure.
Absolutely. And our team will put in all of our different chats, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook. We will put a graphic in the chat so that y'all can share it on all of your social media. And basically, it has the 866-OUR-VOTE in different languages. So if somebody is encountering problems at any polling location around the state, whether it's in rural Nevada, northern Nevada, southern Nevada, y'all can call those numbers in language and get real-time help with your voting needs. And we're going to be staffing that all weekend long and through early vote to make sure you have no problems when you go to the polls. And like Wes just said, we'll have attorneys available. So we'll make sure that your voices are heard and that your vote gets counted. So Wes, coming back to you, with the recent mass shooting, because we can't go through this episode without talking about the horrific tragedy that happened in Texas this week. Last week, it was a grocery store in Buffalo with our elders, our Black elders, kids, elderly people. It's just disgusting. What are some important ways that this tragedy ties into our elections in keeping people safe at the polls?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do want to make sure that everyone is being safe at the polls and taking care of each other. So definitely, if you see something, say something. That's kind of a good rule of thumb, I think, for polling locations. But I mean, just aside from that, too, I know my heart is broken. I think I was in like seventh grade when Columbine happened. So I'm just like sick to death of like hearing about this time and time again. And I would just encourage, Nevada voters, like, however you feel about this issue and the other issue, like it definitely is on the ballot. So like make sure that you research your candidates, know where they stand on these issues, and take that information with you into the voting booth, one way or another.
Yeah, and I just want to also stress, if you're at a polling location and God forbid you see something, say something, right? If somebody is acting unsafe or presenting in a way that is, intimidating to other voters, say something to the poll workers. Or if you see a person in the shirt that Wes is wearing, say something to one of them, right? We want to make sure that we're keeping you safe during this election. And so it's really important. If you see something, you definitely say something.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always on guard for any instances of voter intimidation. If you see people out there and, they're harassing people of color or asking about like immigration status, like if you see any of the volunteer poll watchers, we'll certainly be able to help you, get those kinds of issues taken care of for sure.
Awesome. And I see questions rolling in the chat. So keep those questions coming. I know a lot of people have questions about their mail-in ballots, about their sample ballots. So keep those questions coming in the chat, and we will get to those in just a few minutes. Woodtunes, I see your question. I'm actually going to go back to Emily really quickly. Emily, Woodtunes says, I haven't gotten a mail-in ballot yet. Do I need to contact somebody, and who should I contact?
Oh, great question. Hi, Woodtunes. So I wouldn't just panic just yet if you haven't received your mail-in ballot, because early voting still technically hasn't started. But if you are kind of in the middle of early voting and you haven't received your ballot yet, if you're a Clark County resident, you can reach out to your elections department. The phone number is 702-455-VOTE. I've had that number memorized for many, many years. Or if you're in Washoe County or any particular county in Nevada, just Google the elections department phone number for your particular county and reach out to them and just advise that you haven't received your mail-in ballot yet, and they'll have a process on how they reissue a ballot to you.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. So I wanted to show also our sample ballot I know this is for Clark County. This is obviously my sample ballot. But this is what the sample ballot would look like. And then I actually haven't received my mail-in ballot yet either. So this is my sample ballot. It just came earlier this week. I'll be getting my mail-in ballot hopefully soon, and that's how I plan to vote. So this is your sample ballot. You should have this by now. It has all of the election dates and all of this good stuff. If y'all are going to vote in person, take this with you because it has a little barcode on the back, and that'll be a good thing to help you just get right in the line and get that stuff moving. So we're going to put some great content in the chat for you to share with the 1-866 our vote numbers on it. So share that with your friends and family because we want to get that information out. And we'll get to more questions in just a few minutes. All right, Brian, I want to come to you. So it's your time to shine, my friend. You worked on a voter guide. That is incredible. And you did that with a lot of the folks on our team and Emily's team. Talk to us about this nonpartisan voter guide that we put together, what it is, why it matters, and the work that you did with all of the different candidates, regardless of their party, to get that information together.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Annette, for introducing me as well. So the voter guide is a great tool overall. It has a lot of information that can be used for first-time voters or even experienced voters going into the election season. The homepage even has a great video that, with the help of SSV's team, we put together that is only a minute, but it has so much information that is so useful for the election season. And it's really just overall just a great tool because it just really focuses on the vote by mail aspect of it, same day registration, but then also it has a tool it has candidate questions. So we all work together as a table to put these questions together for all the candidates running in the general and primary elections. And we just wanted to be able to have them on and record, if you will, just to say how they felt about certain topics and certain ideas that people wanted to know, and know how they felt about them.
And this voter guide is completely nonpartisan, right, Brian? We didn't ask one candidate over another. We tried to literally solicit every candidate known to man and hunt down their information, hunt down their cell phone numbers. I mean, if y'all don't see a candidate on there and somebody should be on there, you need to either let us know or call that candidate and ask them why they didn't fill out the voter guide, right, Brian?
Yeah, 100%. It's totally nonpartisan. I had reached out to everyone across the state, Northern Nevada, Reno, the Washoe area, different city council members for Clark, Elko, Washoe, Ely, even Fallon, like even smaller rural areas of Nevada. I really reached out to everyone. We really wanted to make this voter guide the most extensive as we could, so all voters could have all the information that they would need when they do go to let their voice be heard this election season.
Absolutely. So, Brian, why do you think the voter guide is such an important tool to utilize when trying to make an election decision? And for those at home, just so you know, it's www, and we're going to put this in the chat, so don't stress. It's www.votesmartnv.org. So, Brian, why do you think it's so important to have a voter guide like this for Nevadans to be able to make educated decisions about their candidates? And what does it mean if a candidate didn't respond? How should people react to that?
I think it's really important because, like we just touched on, that we ask these candidates these, if you will, questions that everyone wants to know. So if a candidate didn't respond, why wouldn't you respond? These are community members coming together with great ideas and great topics of conversation that we want to know as an elected official how you feel about them. And if an elected official, if you go on our website and look at the votesmartnv.org website, and it says candidate declined to respond, it's because they literally did not fill out a response. And we gave them ample amount of time. I sent multiple reminders. So like Annette was saying, if you would like to know why a candidate that you personally feel is the best didn't respond, maybe you should call them and ask them. Also, it also lets know like the offices that are up for election, how long their term is, how often they get reelected. So you can utilize this tool year round, even if you would like to go back and look at it. So that's just really what I think why it's important to me, really.
And keep those questions coming in. We'll get to them in just a little bit. I see a bunch of questions, Robin. We'll get to your question in a second. So don't go away, anybody. I see all of your questions coming in. Keep those questions coming in our chat. So, Brian, I want to stay on the voter guide for a few minutes. By the way, everyone, the voter guide link is in the chat. So make sure you visit the voter guide before you make your decisions on who you're voting for this election cycle. So this was the first time you put a project like this together. Talk to us about the full process. I know you talked to us a little bit about it already, but, talk to us about how that was working with different candidates from different parties and all of the work that went on behind the scenes to put it together, especially from our team.
Okay. Overall, the process was definitely something that I haven't really seen ever before. Just getting to hear from different people across the state and hearing their different points of views, because I had multiple phone conversations with everyone. And the phone conversations I did have were very nice. Some were longer than others, some were shorter than others. But these candidates really do have an opinion, but it's also, besides their opinion, just listening to the community and being able to understand what the community wants and then reflecting that in their work as an elected official.
Absolutely. All right, Emily, I want to come back to you now. And I know we're getting a couple questions about this in the chat, so I wanted to just address it as we come back, and then we'll go from there. I see Robin and a couple others. So folks really want to know if they haven't gotten their sample ballot and if they haven't gotten their their ballot itself, the vote by mail ballot, what should they do?
By this time, I believe you should have already received your sample ballot. So I would double check. You can always go onto the website of your county elections department to ensure that you are registered to vote. And what usually happens in those cases is that sometimes you might not be receiving your mail because you moved and you didn't update your voter registration. Nevada's move rate is about 21%. And I'm sure that's probably increased with the COVID-19 pandemic. And folks don't usually think about it. And they move, even if it's, in another apartment in the same building, you have to change your address every time you move. The elections department cannot forward, contrary to popular belief, they cannot forward your ballot to your new address. So it's really critical that you update your address. I would call the elections department or go onto their website to ensure what address you have on file. And if for some reason, it's not the correct address, then go ahead and do same-day voter registration so that you can receive a ballot at your correct address.
And Emily, if for some reason there's problems with their registration, they can also do same-day voter registration and update all of that. So there's lots of different options. So if your registration maybe is wrong or you're registered to a different house, you literally can just go update your stuff and vote the same day, correct?
Yeah, that's totally correct. My husband had this problem in the last election cycle that I guess they didn't, couldn't really tell his handwriting, and accidentally he was registered as Ruby instead of Rudy, and was like, what's going on with my voter registration? And so sure enough, we realized what happened, and he was able to update it and participate in same-day voter registration.
Well, I'm never not calling your husband Ruby henceforth. So thank you for telling me that. That is his new name. Anyways, that's maybe the best story you've ever shared with me. That's hilarious.
Now he's
probably mad at us, but that's okay. I don't care. So why, there's lots of different ways to participate in the election. Obviously, voting, registering to vote and then actually voting is the most important way, in my humble opinion, to make your voice heard during an election cycle. But what are some of the other ways that folks can participate in the election cycle? And what are some of the things that, State Voices, the group that you work for, what are some of the needs y'all have from volunteers right now? Because I know we're looking for people statewide to do some volunteer activities.
That's correct. So there are a multitude of different ways that one can participate. One of my favorite ways is being a poll worker. I think for the primary election, but most of the counties already have all of their poll workers, so that's not a need for the primary. But it's an amazing way to contribute into the democratic process for the general election. So if you have the ability to do so, like be a poll worker. In Clark County and Washoe County, there's a huge demand for Spanish speakers to be poll workers. And also in Clark County, there is a huge demand for folks who are fluent in Tagalog. So to be a poll worker, you have to be 18 years of age or older, and you have to be a U.S. citizen and a registered voter. And I think what's really important about being a poll worker is that we need more people that come from our communities that look like us and that have our experiences and understand some of the barriers that community face when going out to the ballot, so they're able to, make people feel a little bit more at ease. Because it can be nerve-wracking going to go vote, especially if it's your first time. One of the things with the work that we're doing at Silver State Voices, and we're working with ACLU of Nevada and Institute for Progressive Nevada, is running our election protection program that Wes talked about just a moment ago. And with that program, we're looking for poll monitors. And with the poll monitoring program, we have amazing volunteers that are eyes and ears on the ground at polling locations, that can tell us, what is happening. And they do anything and everything from counting the amount of people who are in line. So we always have an accurate amount of how many people that are polling locations. So if there's a large line at the Boulevard Mall for some, reason, we're able to communicate with our command center and say, okay, this park that's, a couple of minutes away, doesn't have a line, right? And so tell folks that they can go to this particular polling location. We also have care teams. So say you just don't want to be at a polling location, but you want to help, drive snacks and things around. We have our care team that goes to polling locations and drops off water, snacks. We even have wheelchairs for folks who may need a wheelchair to sit down during the polling, while waiting in line to go vote. So we really, really need poll monitors in both Clark and Washoe County, even more so Washoe County. Unfortunately, what we've really seen is that there's been this deep level of intimidation by folks that have, certain values. They're just not in an alignment, right? And it has nothing to do with political party, but just these people that have really bought into the big lie that are intimidating people from wanting to, be at polling locations and doing a good service of ensuring that everybody has the right to vote and knows, what the process is. And so we really do need poll monitors to be our eyes and the ears. So if folks want to sign up to be a poll monitor, please put it in the Facebook feed. We will take down, my team is watching, and they will take down your information. Or you can also DM us on Twitter.
We put the link in the chat.
Okay, awesome. Yay. Okay. So yeah, definitely contact us. Even if it's just one day, it's fun. We put our volunteers through a very rigorous training to ensure that we're equipping them with all of the cool tools. And you will get a fabulous election protection shirt as well. This year, we're going with gray shirts, because nobody wants to be wearing all black in 100-degree weather in June. So yeah, join our EP program.
Yes, and the election protection program and other stuff that y'all can do. It's in the chat. The links are in the chat. So use that form and sign up there to do election protection work with us. So thank you for that, Emily. All right, one more question for you, Emily, and then we're going to move to Wes.
Okay.
So how can people who don't have the opportunity to vote still be able to help in the election process? Because they can still be part of this.
Yeah.
Or if you're not of age to vote, you can also be a part of the process.
Yes. So thank you so much for mentioning that. So one of my most favorite bills that we've ever worked on is Assembly Bill 345. He's always going to be Speaker Frierson to me, even though he's not in the assembly anymore. But fun fact, it is the largest piece of voting rights legislation ever in the state of Nevada. And one of the really cool things that it does is that it allows 16 and 17-year-olds to be poll workers. And you can have more than one 16 and 17-year-old per site. So say that you have a student club at your high school. Luckily, we don't have school on election day, so your whole club could sign up to be poll workers. And I think it's an amazing opportunity to really get your feet in and see how democracy is conducted within our state. So once they're 18, they're ready to go and vote and already know how it all works. And I think the same thing, say that you're not a U.S. citizen and you really want to contribute, you can become one of our poll monitors. We have folks that really love doing that. And there are many other partners who are running different programs, GeoTV programs as well, knocking on doors. And I think it's so important that folks that don't have status are still part of this process, because there's so much on the line for them politically that we should be hearing from their voices as well.
Absolutely. All right, Emily, stand by. We're going to come back to you in just
All right.
because there's plenty of questions coming in the chat. So y'all at home, keep those questions coming because there are no dumb questions when it comes to our elections and voting. And we want to make sure we get to all your questions tonight. I see a couple more coming in the chat, so just keep them coming. We'll get to all of them in just a few minutes. All right, Wes, I want to come back to you. You know, through the years, how have you seen our election process change in the state of Nevada? You were a reporter before the job at ACLU. So you've seen a lot. You've been through a lot with us. What changes have you seen for the good and for the bad? And what do you think folks at home need to know about our election process?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen a lot of changes for sure. You know, I was born in Las Vegas and I've seen it change a lot over the years. I remember, you know, when I first started voting, we had early voting still, but it was like this one specific place was the only place you were allowed to go and vote at on election day. And I remember I had this like one experience where I had to like scramble to like figure out what my polling place was. And that's gone now, right? Like you can go anywhere on election day in your county and cast a ballot if you're an eligible voter. And I think that's great, you know, and I think the thing I would just really emphasize is that our elections are safe and secure, right? They're safe and secure. There's all these myths about like widespread voter fraud, and just none of that is a real thing. It's not. Even like our Republican Secretary of State says otherwise. But also like our philosophy here at the ACLU of Nevada has always been that like if you're an eligible voter, you shouldn't have to do backflips through a flaming hula hoop to exercise your freedom to vote, right? Like it should be safe and secure, yes, but it should be easy and accessible for eligible voters. And we've come a long way on that. You know, we've got automatic voter registration, same day voter registration. We have like 2 weeks now of early voting time. You can go to any vote center in the county. We've just made so many really great steps forward just to make it, you know, pretty easy to really exercise that freedom to vote that people have. So I'm really proud of the work we've done. And, you know, we see some of these colorful characters coming out of the woodworks to really try and pull us backwards. And I mean, I know me and my team, we're ready to fight like heck to make sure we don't go there.
Brian just said to me in the chat that his first election was in 2020, and now I may want to die. Okay, we're having fun tonight. So Wes, more questions for you. So during early voting, folks in Nevada can vote where?
Oh, anywhere there's early voting. I always go to the mall, but if you look to, it's going to be laid out in your sample ballot. You can easily go to resources like, you know, like Silver State Voices, go to your county elections department website. There's tons of ways to look up the early voting centers. I just go to the mall.
That's right. Grocery stores, the mall, they're all over the community. And then what about the day of the election, June 14th? That is our primary election day. So you can vote the 2 weeks leading up to the primary election day. We like skip a day. We skip that Monday. And then we do election day on Tuesday, June 14th. So talk to us about where folks can go on election day to vote.
Yeah, so like I said, we don't have like those specific precincts anymore. It's vote centers. So you can go anywhere in the county that is doing voting. You can go there, and you can even like register that day if you need to, or if you need to correct an error in your registration, like go and do it. I'm more of a Dropbox guy, but I love like the election day energy, and you see like the families out with the kids. Like I just love it. I love election day.
And remind folks, and I think this is important, Wes. So, and Emily, if you want to hop in here too, please do. So say you get your ballot in the mail. Every Nevadan who's registered to vote will get their ballot in the mail. That is an option you have, but you don't want to vote by mail. Or you moved into a new house and you get somebody else's ballot. There are steps that you should take if those things happen, because let's face it, folks, those things do happen. So what do folks do if they get a ballot, but they choose to vote in person or on election day?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say if you get a ballot that's not yours, make sure you send it back so that the elections department knows that person's not at that address anymore.
Literally just write return to sender on it, friends, and send it back. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, and then if you get a mail ballot and you don't want it, you can always sign up to opt out of mail ballots. Like if you're like, I'm never going to do this, go ahead and take those steps to do that. But if you're like, oh, I'm just feeling like I want to do it in person this year, just bring your mail ballot with you and you can turn it in at the polling place.
So this big conspiracy, Emily, that, you know, these people receive a ballot at their house because they moved into a new house or they moved into a new apartment. And maybe that person that was previously there forgot to change their address. And, you know, the right loves to go crazy about this. And, oh, my God, there's voter fraud. No. It literally is just somebody who was registered there before you. All you have to do, don't take a picture and put it on the internet because there's literally nothing you can do with that. What do people do if they get a ballot in the mail that isn't for them?
Just return it back. You can return it back in the mail. You can even go to the elections department. If you want to give it to them in person, go ahead and do that. Just surrender it back and advise them that this voter does not live here at this location anymore. So they need to stop with the fake news.
Wes, speaking of fake news, I want to come back to you because I think this is really important. And this goes to the points Emily made about election protection and the big lie. I spent quite a bit of time in 2020 at the elections department observing our excellent election process. And anybody can sign up to do that, by the way. You can actually see how they count our votes and how all of that is done at the elections department, north, south, rural communities, whatever. Wes, talk to us about the process statewide that is used to ensure there isn't any voter fraud, matching of signatures, the verification process. There's a lengthy process that goes into making sure that our votes are counted correctly.
Sure. I mean, I think we might need you to jump in on this one, Emily, because you're the voting policy queen. But I will definitely underscore what you said. It is safe and secure. It's a really strict process. There's multiple eyes on mail ballots to check it for accuracy, to check that signature, to make sure that matches. If the signature doesn't match, it triggers additional review processes. Like the Secretary of State and other law enforcement types really looked into all of these cases of alleged voter fraud and found, it's just the normal amount. One person accidentally votes twice every election, but there was no wide-ranging conspiracy. And it's really sad to me that it's created an atmosphere that's basically dangerous for these really great, hardworking election teams that work at these counties doing such a great job to make sure that we have safe and secure and reliable elections. And now a lot of them are afraid because of all these people heckling them everywhere they go these days.
Emily, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, there are various different steps that the election department workers take. But I think, and they have various different machines that are used to filter through all of the ballots. We've also witnessed the training that they put their workers through. And it's a very detailed, robust training that I think is incredible. And I think that a lot of these people who are naysayers, if they were actually, just spend some time in observing these processes, then they would shut up. But, the reality is that in the process, the signature is definitely one of the biggest aspects. And one of the things that I really like about the process is here as well, is that they have observers that are part of committees that they create that are bipartisan. You have somebody who's a Democrat, they have somebody who's a Republican, registered Democrats, Republicans, and somebody who's nonpartisan or a third party, right? That are there observing every single process. If there is a signature that does not match, for example, what is on record for the DMV files, all of those people have to take a look at it and say, okay, yay or nay. So it's not just, for example, it's not just Joseph Paul Gloria here in Clark County that's just sitting in his office saying, okay, no, no, no. There's a very elaborate process that goes through. And I mean, Annette, you and I spent some very long hours there in 2020 observing it very early in the morning and kind of cold as well. But we got to see it for ourselves. And so there's no doubt in my mind that we have a secure process because I've been able to witness it myself.
Yeah, it was one of the most incredible things I've ever got to experience as, a person who has done this work for a very long time now. And if you really want to understand our election process in the state of Nevada, sign up to go be a part of that process. Emily, actually, Bev in a chat says, how do you sign up to see the counting process? So you can sign up for that and be a part of it for both the primary election and for the general election all across the state. How do folks do that?
Yeah, so you just call your elections department. Each county has a little bit different processes. So I don't want to speak in general, but for like Clark County, for example, you call the elections department and say, I want to sign up to be an observer. They do make you go through a training beforehand. You can't just walk in and observe. But once you contact them, you advise them that you want to do this, they'll give you the schedule of the training. And there is already a schedule of when everything is going to happen and what day it starts and when's the last day as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we'll need those observers all the way through because votes, will continue being tabulated even after Election Day. Yeah. So please, if you want to sign up and register to be a part of that process, call your local elections department in your county across the state and get involved with that process because we need you involved with that because it's an important part of the process.
Yeah, and if I must say, it's one of the areas of the overall election process that where we saw the most intimidation as well. And so if you are, willing to go there and also make sure that folks are protected, I have to give a big shout out to just like our election heroes as well. 2020 was just a year that we saw just exponential levels of violence towards not only the county registrars. I think, unfortunately, they get the worst of it. Anything and everything to the more extreme of like death threats, right? But even just their entry level employees not be feeling safe and going in because there are people screaming outside of their location. So, if you have the guts to do it, please do it because we need to ensure that our election heroes are protected as well.
Absolutely. And it was, like I said, one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. And it was really important to sign up for. So highly encourage y'all to get involved with that. All right, Brian, I want to come back to you before we go to audience questions. You just aged me in the chat as a new voter in the state of Nevada, just overall, because you are a child. What was it like voting for the first time in 2020? And, what have you learned since being with Battleborn and Institute for a Progressive Nevada about the election process that maybe surprised you?
Well, it's kind of funny, but yeah, I think the election process is pretty good. I think me being in it now, it opened my eyes up more to not just the presidential election, but also like community elections, like the smaller elections, and make those really count. And I didn't really know that until I came around and actually started doing this work that, like your mayors count, the sheriffs, those races count, your district attorneys, those races really count. So just being able to see that and be able to be a part of the process and actually now being able to go out to the polls and then putting the practice that I've been learning to work is really just a good process to see overall. And I really enjoy it.
And on the voter guide, talk to us about the different. So obviously the voter guide has candidate information, but what other information is on there that you worked so hard to put together so that folks have the latest and greatest about all of our elections across the state?
There's also, there's there's the information about the voting, like the dates, and that's very important. But also, there's a drop down for what's my district. Since we just went through redistricting, if you go to the drop down for Clark and Washoe, you'll be able to enter your address and find all of your elected officials for your specific area. And I think this is a really good tool because not a lot of people knew about redistricting, or they might have forgot about redistricting. So it's a good tool to have in the voter guide. So people who are going to vote will know exactly who they're going to be voting for on their ballot, instead of just seeing a bunch of random names and be like, oh, I'm just going to check this one and this one and this one. But they'll actually know who's running and actually know where they stand on issues and actually know who to vote for.
Yeah, and it's really important for them to know their districts as well, like what districts they're in because of redistricting now. Also, talk to us about the languages that are on the voter guide. I think that's a really cool feature that you should definitely brag about.
Yeah, so we have a lot of different languages. There's Tagalog, Chinese, Korean. I think we did Thai. But I want to think
Spanish.
And yes, and Spanish as well. Don't want to forget that one. But we did put a lot of effort and time into our translation work so that this voter guide would be able to be read and understood by everyone in the state and those who they want to share it with, family members, cousins, friends, anyone that would like to read it, regardless of their native tongue that they speak.
Yes, good job, Brian. Tell everybody what the voter guide is again, just so we have it, and we'll put it in the chat again.
Okay, cool. Thank you. The voter guide is votesmartnv.org. One more time, that's votesmartnv, as in Nevada.org.
Yes, go there. Brian worked really hard to put all that information together for y'all. So make sure you go there before you go vote, before you send your ballot back, and check that out. All right, Brian, you did a great job. So stick around. We've got audience questions. Okay, friends, let's get to some audience questions now. Woodtune says, since this is an open carry state, can firearms be worn at a polling place?
I can take that. So yes and no. Unfortunately, it depends on what type of location you're going to. That's a polling location. There are some polling locations that are government centers. So if you go to a like community center, that's associated with the government entity, and so you would not be able to take a gun at that particular location. You would not be able to take a gun at a polling location that's a school. But one of the biggest things that we've seen is sometimes we have the tents in parking lots. I think that's what the one that we saw the most in 2020. And those are amazing vote centers because they have lots of voters go to them. But unfortunately, unless it is on private property that the owner of the property says that they don't want guns at that location, then folks would be able to carry a gun with them at that particular location. Hopefully, our legislators can change that in the future. I'm looking at them. I'm hoping that they're hearing me, especially in light of everything that's been in the news recently. And we saw a lot of animosity happen in the 2020 election, and we're concerned as to what's going to happen at polling locations at 2022. Everybody that has the right to vote should be able to cast their ballot feeling safe and comfortable with zero intimidation. But what's important is that if you are at a polling location and you see somebody that has a gun, but you see that they're maybe acting a little bit inappropriate, or they are starting to act a little bit belligerent or what have you, go ahead and flag that to the captain of the polling location, and they will, they're trained for these particular situations, and they will handle the situation accordingly.
Yeah, and I just want to flag, Woodtunes, this is a great question, and it makes my blood boil because this is something that Emily and I flagged for the legislature last legislative session, and I'd just like to point out to all the legislators hopefully watching, I told you so. But it is a problem. We know it's a problem. We are addressing it with the different counties. We are addressing it across the state with different elected officials. We are working with the different law enforcement agencies also to, make sure that they understand when they should and shouldn't come to a polling location. So just know we understand this issue. I work on gun violence prevention every single day. It's one of the core issues we work on at Battleborn Progress. And we obviously see the intersection of voter intimidation with guns and voting rights. And so this is something that all of us are taking very seriously and making sure we're doing everything in our power to keep you as safe as humanly possible when you go to vote. So we are working on it, and don't think we're not thinking about this. Oh, it makes me so angry. All right. Next question. How can we know where candidates stand on issues that we care about? Brian, you want to take this?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So it's all in the voter guide, actually. So if you go to votesmartnv.org and go to the candidates drop down section of the voter guide, you'll see some have faces and some don't, and that's because they declined to respond. But if there's a picture up there, you'll see all of their responses to the questions that we asked them. And each candidate did receive a different set of questions. So U.S. senators got U.S. Senate questions. District attorney got district attorney questions. City council got city council questions. But yeah, it's in the candidate drop down section of the voter guide.
Yeah, and if I could just jump on, ask them, right? Like, if you have a particular issue that you're really passionate about, I mean, I love the voter guide, so +1 on votesmartnv.org. I feel like the people in my life that are not great voters, usually I hear things from them like, oh, well, I don't understand the issues, and that's why I don't go out and vote a lot. So find those voter guides, but also don't be shy to ask your electeds. They work for you.
Absolutely.
Or they're applying to work for you.
And, go on social media. If you don't have their phone number, which you should easily be able to find, go on social media and tag them in a post. I do that all the time. Find them at events and ask them how they feel. Like Wes said, they work for you. So you get to ask them questions contrary to popular belief. We do get to ask candidates and elected officials questions. Thank you for that, Wes. I appreciate that. Dilo says, where do I go to find out where candidate contributions are coming from? Wes, I feel like as a former journalist, this is a great question for you.
Yeah, so Secretary of State's office is the answer to that. So there's 4 filing periods throughout the year. Basically, candidates have to file a quarterly report on their contributions and expenses. And if you go, I'm blanking on the exact words to tell you to look for, but if you go on the Secretary of State's office and click around a little bit, you'll find it. And it's a search function too. So you can you can search for candidates. You can search for donors specifically if you know their name. It's actually really cool. I kind of geek out about it every election season, just being who's got the money going where.
I'm going to help out my dear friend Wes. And the exact term is campaign and expense reports. I've spent many hours going through them.
And the shorthand for it is C&E reports. So if you're looking for C&E reports or campaigns or contributions and expenses reports, that's what you're looking for. Just Google Nevada Secretary of State and it literally just put in somebody's name in the search bar. It will come up. I've spent a lot of time on there searching people. Also, if you want to know how much money Adam Laxalt and Joe Lombardo have gotten from the NRA, just visit our Battleborn Progress Twitter page. Emily is covering her ears because this is not a C3 conversation. This is C4. Just go on there and see how much money they've also gotten from the NRA. We have it. Okay, moving on. Robin is...
I'm sorry. One more. If you want to get really, really wonky, you can go to TV station websites and look at their FCC reports about how much advertising candidates have bought as well. I also enjoy those.
Yeah, and that's a good way also to see how much PAC money is coming in from out of state. So political action committees, there's state political action committees, and then there's super PACs, right? That we've heard so much about out of state political action committees. You can find lots of the good information by going to those TV websites like Wes said. Obviously, we spend a lot of time being super sleuths about these candidates. Okay, Emily, back to you. Robin has another question, which I think is super important. Robin says, I moved and updated my address in August. I have received items from the election department. I have checked my address online. It is updated. Very weird. But once I go to the poll, I will be expected to vote, but I need a sample ballot to look at the candidates. Is one available online?
Thanks, Robin, for the question. I believe it is. I believe that it is. It's been a little bit since I've gone onto the website, but I believe it is. And if for any reason it's not, then you should be able to call your elections department and they will figure out a way to get you your sample ballot. We've had folks call into our hotline before, and the elections department has been able to help them out in getting them a sample ballot.
And Robin, I know you've had a couple questions tonight, and thank you so much for sharing those. I appreciate it because I know you're not the only person experiencing this, and they're really important questions. Yeah. Honestly, I think your best bet is just call your elections department. The elections department officials all across the state are so helpful, and they're doing an amazing job. So just call them and ask them what's going on with your stuff. They'll be able to see on the back end and really get you right answers. So the correct answer is, when in doubt about any of your voting information or materials, call your elections department for the county that you live in. That is the best way to get the most accurate information, and you're not bothering them. That is what they're paid to do, is answer voters' questions. So when in doubt, just call your local elections department in your county, and they'll be able to answer your questions with absolute certainty.
Yes, definitely do. When in doubt, make that call, but it is available online. So if you go to the county registrar's website, it's a really simple login process. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it's just like your driver's license number and your birthday and your name, and they can kind of like pull up your file. But you can also, and this is what I do too, because I don't like the paper sample ballot, you can like opt out of getting those in paper and get them emailed to you. So there are some online options. I would go on and do some sleuthing. But when in doubt, like Annette said, do make that call.
And like I said, Robin, and I saw your thank you in the chat. Thank you for tuning in, and share this information with your friends and family. Share this episode with your friends and family. Share this on Facebook, Twitter, all of the different places, because we want to answer folks' questions. But again, if you take nothing else from this episode tonight, if you have questions about the election, when in doubt, call your election officials in your county across the state. These folks are so wonderful. They are truly doing the Lord's work, and they will answer all of your questions and make sure you get the proper information, the right information to go and be able to cast your vote, get a new sample ballot, whatever you need to make your voice heard during this primary season and then into the general election. The other thing is if you go to a polling location and you have problems, use the 866 Our Vote hotline, and we will be on the other end to help you and make sure that your vote gets cast. So there are lots of different resources out there. Use them because they are there. Wes, show it off again. Pull focus, talk a little bit, show off your shirt, and tell people about the election protection.
866 Our Vote, definitely. If you're encountering issues at early voting, any step of the process, if you're encountering issues, call that number. They'll have frequently asked questions they should be able to answer on the spot. And if not, they will make sure that your issue gets to an attorney. And it's just, we're here to provide that service. And we love to do it, honestly. We get so excited to help people vote. Like, please make use of us if you encounter problems.
And again, this is totally nonpartisan. It doesn't matter if you're registered as a Republican, a nonpartisan, a Democrat. If you need help voting, use the hotline, the 1-866 Our Vote hotline. It is literally for everyone. Our jobs is to make sure every single human being who is eligible to vote in the state of Nevada and registered gets to vote in this election. So we want to make sure all of your voices are heard. All right, I want to close this evening with this really important question because I think it's a great way to go out. And Emily, I think you're going to nerd out about this one. So Shelby asks, what do we need to do to protect the advances in voting rights here in Nevada? And I think this is a great question. You know, while the rest of the country is moving backwards on so many issues, Nevada is moving forward, and Nevada has been moving forward thanks to people like Governor Sisolak, the legislature, other elected officials who actually believe in your right to vote. So, Emily, what do we need to do to protect all of these advances that we've made the past couple of sessions to get formerly incarcerated people to be able to vote? By the way, if you're formerly incarcerated in Nevada and you're out of jail, you can vote now. So what do we need to do to protect those things, to protect our hybrid election system that allows you to vote in all these different ways? How do we protect that?
Oh, such a great question. Thanks, Shelby, for asking it. And as Annette said, if you are formerly incarcerated in the state of Nevada, even if you are on parole or probation, you do have the right to vote. We have our amazing rights restoration coordinator, Jageda Chambers, who's been doing so much amazing work in ensuring that folks are getting, building that trust in the system that put them there in the first place, and ensuring that they are educated, get registered, and that they turn out to vote. And we have a special rights restoration hotline that we'll share out with folks as well in the chat. So if you are formerly incarcerated and have any questions, you can call that specific hotline and talk to somebody who's been incarcerated themselves. But I think there's a couple of different things that we need to do. I think one, we need to take advantage of all of the things that we've implemented in the first place, right? We fought really, really hard for vote by mail. I think that was one of the biggest fights that we've ever had around voting rights. We fought hard for same-day voter registration. And, these are, I would say, luxuries that we have that don't exist in a lot of states, right? I have counterparts that are doing similar amazing work as us in like Alabama, and they don't have the access to these things, right? So I think one, it's important to do that. Two, I think it's important to be vocal with your elected officials that we want these things in place always, because they give access to our community to be able to vote. So whether your representatives or Democrats or nonpartisans or Republicans, like, tell them when you see them, or even tweet at them, right, that you appreciate that our state has it, and tell them not to mess with our policies. And I think three, kind of, Annette talked about it before. What we're seeing is that although we've done all of this amazing work statewide at the legislature to be able to pass so many amazing policies, we've been seeing efforts at the county commission level to do some super regressive efforts in rolling back some of these amazing protections that we have. Excuse me. A couple of months ago, in Washoe County, there was a resolution that had over 21 different provisions that were just really rooted in white supremacy and voter suppression. One of them including that the registrar could call on the National Guard to be at polling locations. Well, one, that's illegal. Only the governor can do so. So they needed to take that somewhere else. But, I think that we're continuing, unfortunately, of the 17 counties in the state of Nevada, there have been 7 that have made some attempt in hearing or passing some type of resolution. And so it's not just with the governor, it's not just with the state legislators. Like, have this conversation with your county commission. And the thing, if you live in Nye County, if you live in White Pine, you have a smaller county and you're more likely to actually have a personal relationship with your county commissioner. Tell them that you don't appreciate that they're doing all of this foolery, and that it's really messing with your family, your community's ability to vote. So I hope I got, put the nail in the coffin, but I think that that's a part of it. And honestly, I would say the last thing is be part of the combating misinformation culture. I think that there's so much out there on the internet of distrust that's created because the wrong people are putting the wrong things out there about the voting process. Like, go onto our Twitter, SSV_NV, go to votesmartnv.org, we're always going to have the correct information out there. People are less likely to have distrust in the electoral process if they're actually getting correct and accurate information.
Yes. And I will just say, cover your ears, Emily. If somebody is trying to take away your right to vote, then you need to vote them out of office because they don't belong in that office. If somebody doesn't believe in the right to vote and everybody's right to vote regardless of their party, and they're trying to roll back your voting rights, then vote their asses out of office. That's it. Wes, you want to add anything to that?
Oh, it's hard to add. Emily is just so wonderful. I will follow her into battle, I swear. But here's what I'll say. I am convinced, and I don't think there's anyone could convince me otherwise, that the vast, vast, vast majority of Nevadans appreciates having these options. I think, it showed in the turnout numbers from 2020. It showed in my family and friends and all the people I know personally. And I think what we're up against, honestly, is just a really energized, really intense, really loud and vocal minority. So I think this is just not a time when folks who do enjoy those options can be silent about it. So I think you really do got to use your voice and just say, I like having options. I will not tolerate people trying to pull us backwards on voting rights, and really just speak out. And like Emily said, at every level of government, because it is from county to the state, they're all over the place.
All right, Brian, you get the last word on this. And for the evening, how do folks make their voices heard, and how do we make sure we're protecting our right to vote here in Nevada?
I think to answer that question, it's just getting out to vote, just going to polling locations or doing any option that you see fit, like the best option that fits your lifestyle, your time schedule. Like, just please get your voice heard, go to a polling location, tell your friends, family members, cousins, aunties, like everybody, anybody eligible to vote, please go out and vote in your community elections, presidential, just any election. Just use your voice, please. It's yours.
All right. Thank you to this fabulous crew this evening for helping me with this. Don't forget, your sample ballot should be out to you by now. You should also have your mail-in ballot either to you or to you soon. And early voting starts in Nevada this weekend. So it starts on Saturday. You can go in person to vote. You can also vote by mail. Please take your ballot in if you don't want to vote by mail. Surrender it. If you get somebody else's ballot in the mail, surrender it, take it in, or send it back. You don't need to cause chaos and drama. Just send it back and say, return to sender. This person doesn't live here anymore. Not a big deal. Other states do vote by mail. It's fine, everyone. Take a chill pill, send it back. It's not a big deal. So your primary election for the state of Nevada, early voting in person, runs from May 28th until June 10th. Let me say that again, everyone, and we'll put the dates in the chat. May 28th through June 10th in the state of Nevada is your early voting dates. When you get your sample ballot, whether it's in Northern Nevada, rural Nevada, or here in Las Vegas like mine, you will have your early voting locations in your sample ballot. You can also find those online. You can vote anywhere in your county during early voting. So literally go anywhere, a mall, a grocery store, IKEA. Go where you need to go, find a place that has early voting and vote, and bring your sample ballot, or you can bring your sample ballot, and you should bring your mail-in ballot if you choose to vote in person, and just surrender it. Reminder, on the back, I'm going to cover my address because I don't want y'all coming to my house. There's a little barcode that makes it super easy. They just scan the barcode when you walk into the polling location, and you can just have your information pop right up, and they can verify your signature and move you right along. So that's an easy way to get your information to when you go to vote, is bring your sample ballot with you. In addition to that, Election Day is right here. Tuesday, June 14th is Election Day. So if you're like Wes and you love the nostalgia of voting on Election Day, because you're a purist, that's fine. We love you too. Go on Election Day. We'll have election protection on Election Day. Or if you're just a procrastinator, like some people I know, go on Election Day. Polls will be open until the evening. And all of the information will be inside your book on election day polling locations as well. Again, you can vote anywhere in your county on election day now, but you have to be in your county. So if you live in Clark County, you got to vote there. If you live in Washoe, you got to vote there. So in your county, you can literally vote anywhere. You can find all of this information and more on votesmartnv.org. That is our voter guide, our nonpartisan voter guide. Go there, do your research on the candidates, fill out your sample ballot, take it with you, go vote, or mail in your ballot. All right, friends, I hope we've answered all of your questions. Share this on your Facebook, your Twitter, your Twitch, all of different social medias. We want people to have the correct voting information when they go make their voices heard all across Nevada. So share this with your friends and family. If folks have questions about voting, call your local election department. That is the best way to get information. Or if you have problems voting, you need additional information, all you have to do is go to 1-866-OUR-VOTE. That is our nonpartisan voter protection hotline. All of your questions can be answered there as well. All right, everyone, I hope you stay safe and healthy. Make sure you make your voice heard, mail in that ballot, go vote in person, whatever you need to do, but go participate in the primary. Remember, you can do same-day voter registration in the state of Nevada. So even if you're not registered to vote right now, you can still vote. So make your voices heard. We need you to vote in this election, and we need you to participate. All right, everyone, stay safe and healthy, and we will be back with you next Thursday for another Out in Front with Annette. Thanks, everyone, and thanks to our special guests for tuning in. Have a great evening, everyone.